When I first met Isabella, she was standing at the coffee counter of a small cafe near my office in Los Angeles, arguing with the barista in a mix of Spanish and English because they got her order wrong. I don't know what it was about that moment, maybe her confidence, maybe her laugh, but something just pulled me toward her. I offered to buy her a new drink to smooth things over, and that 5-minute encounter turned into a 2-hour conversation about everything from her love for California sunsets to her struggles moving here from Colombia. She said she was taking online courses and working part-time, trying to build a life here, and I admired that drive. We started dating soon after, and honestly, I thought I'd found the kind of love I've been praying for after years of failed relationships. She was warm, attentive, a little mysterious but never distant, and for the first few months, she made me feel like I was the only man in her world. My friends teased me for falling too fast, but I didn't care. I introduced her to my parents, and though my mom had her reservations, she said Isabella seemed too perfect, I brushed it off as overprotectiveness. Around the 8-month mark, Isabella began talking about marriage, about how much she wanted stability and how hard it was to live with constant uncertainty about her visa status. I told her not to worry, that we'd figure it out because by then, I genuinely couldn't imagine life without her. We got engaged 3 months later, a small ceremony on the beach, her eyes glistening as she promised me forever. For a while, everything felt right. Until one Tuesday morning, my phone rang at work, and the voice on the other end introduced himself as an officer from U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. He asked, in a calm official tone, if I was aware of any arrangement between myself and Isabella for her to gain permanent residency. My heart froze. I asked him to repeat himself, thinking I had misheard, but he said it again. Arrangement. He told me they had received an anonymous report claiming our marriage was not genuine and that it was part of an immigration deal. I hung up, stunned, the world spinning around me. I spent the rest of the day replaying every memory, every smile, every late-night conversation where she swore she loved me. When I got home, Isabella was cooking like nothing happened, humming softly to a Spanish song, and when I told her about the call, her face turned pale. She laughed nervously at first, said it must be some kind of scam or mistake, but something in her tone cracked, like she wasn't surprised, just caught. That night, as she showered, I noticed her phone buzzing on the counter. A message flashed from a contact saved as Miguel, USA Docs, and it said, "Tell him the interview got delayed. Don't freak him out yet." My stomach dropped. I knew right then that the life I thought I was building was a lie, but I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I decided to wait to find out exactly how deep her deception went before she could twist the story. I had no idea that the truth waiting for me would not only shatter what I believed about her, but about myself too.
That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling while Isabella slept peacefully beside me, her head resting on my chest like she had no worries in the world. My mind kept looping through that message. Tell him the interview got delayed. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how naive I had been. I remembered how she used to avoid talking about her past, how she always brushed off questions about why she really came to the U.S., saying it was for better opportunities. I had trusted her because I wanted to believe that love was enough. But now, everything felt staged. The timing of our engagement, her sudden rush to get married, her insistence on filing paperwork right away. The next morning, I pretended everything was fine. I kissed her goodbye and went to work, but instead of going to the office, I drove to a friend of mine, Jake, who worked as an immigration lawyer. I told him everything, from the call to the text message. Jake sighed and told me that this kind of thing happens more often than people think. Marriages arranged for green cards, often involving fake love stories. My stomach churned when he said it. He advised me to collect proof before doing anything rash because if she had indeed used me, I'd need to protect myself legally. For the next few days, I became someone I didn't recognize. I started checking her messages when she wasn't around, quietly scanning her emails, listening to her conversations in the other room. What I found broke me piece by piece. There were messages between her and someone named Cammy where Isabella bragged about how easy it was to get me to propose, how the American guy fell fast, and that soon it'll all be done. There was even a mention of someone named Miguel, the same name from that text, apparently handling her paperwork. It wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was a whole operation. She had planned this from the beginning. One night, while she was in the shower, I scrolled through her photo gallery and found screenshots of visa forms, emails with immigration consultants, and even one message that said, "Once I get the card, I'll figure out what to do with him." My hands were shaking. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just heartbroken, I was being played. I decided not to confront her right away. Instead, I made copies of everything, photos, messages, even her documents, and stored them in a separate drive. Jake helped me prepare a written statement in case things went south. But as days passed, the weight of pretending became unbearable. Every time she smiled at me, every time she touched my hand, I felt like I was living with a stranger. Then one Friday evening, as we were having dinner, she brought up the immigration interview again, saying we'd need to act like the perfect couple for the officials. I asked her what she meant by act, and she froze. Just for a split second, but I saw it. That flicker of panic. I asked her straight, "Isabella, did you ever love me, or was I just your ticket?" Her eyes widened, and for a moment she looked like she might confess, but instead she stood up, furious, accusing me of not trusting her, turning it all around like I was the problem. That manipulation only confirmed what I already knew. I told her the interview was off until further notice and walked out before she could say another word. But the next morning, I found her gone, along with half of the things in our apartment. No note, no call, just silence.
I spent the next 2 days trying to convince myself she'd come back, that maybe she just needed space. But deep down, I knew she wasn't coming home. My apartment felt like a crime scene. Her perfume still in the air, her toothbrush gone, her favorite mug missing from the cabinet. I couldn't eat, couldn't focus at work, and every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was her. But it never was. On the third day, I called Jake again, told him she'd disappeared, and he said it was time to report everything officially. We contacted the immigration office, and I submitted the screenshots, the texts, everything. But I couldn't just sit back and wait. I needed answers. So I started digging into that Miguel contact. I found an old email of hers with his name linked to a small consulting firm in Miami that assisted with immigration processes. The deeper I searched, the more disturbing it got. There were posts on local forums about scams where fake-called consultants arranged quick marriages between U.S. citizens and foreigners for cash. My heart sank because it started making sense. Her sudden interest in filing paperwork, her emotional breakdown when I delayed the interview, even her constant talk about our future. I wasn't her future, I was her transaction. But I needed to confirm it from her directly. Using the location tracker I'd once set up on her phone after she lost it months ago, I saw her pin appear in San Diego. I drove 6 hours straight that night, fueled by anger and heartbreak. When I got there, I parked near the address shown on the tracker, a small rented house in a quiet neighborhood. I saw her car outside. My hands trembled as I sat there, debating whether to knock or just drive away and let karma deal with her. But I couldn't. I needed closure. I walked up to the house and knocked. It took a few seconds, but when the door opened, Isabella stood there, wearing casual clothes, hair tied back, no trace of guilt in her eyes, only shock. Behind her, I saw a man sitting on the couch working on a laptop. He looked up, and I recognized him immediately from one of her photos, Miguel. She froze, her lips parted, whispering my name like she'd seen a ghost. "What is this?" I asked quietly, trying to hold back my rage. She stammered, saying it wasn't what I thought, but the expression on Miguel's face said otherwise. He stood up slowly, calm and cold, and said, "You shouldn't have come here, man." That was all it took for me to snap. I told Isabella everything. The phone call, the documents, the messages, the screenshots. and as I listed every piece of evidence, she went pale. Miguel tried to interrupt, saying I was making a mistake, but I pulled out my phone and hit record. I told them both that I'd already sent everything to the authorities, and this recording was just backup. Isabella started crying, begging me to listen, saying it started as a plan, but she really fell in love with me later. Her words bounced off me like raindrops on metal. I told her she destroyed something pure, something real for a piece of paper and a scheme. When I turned to leave, Miguel muttered something in Spanish under his breath, but I didn't care to understand. That night, I drove back to LA in silence, my mind numb, but my heart oddly steady. The next morning, immigration called again. They'd received my statement, and an investigation was now open. For the first time in weeks, I felt a strange kind of peace. But I didn't know that Isabella wasn't done yet, because 2 weeks later, she showed up at my door again, crying, desperate, and with news that would twist everything even further.
It was raining when she showed up again. I remember because the sound of water hitting the porch was the only thing keeping me from slamming the door in her face. She looked nothing like the Isabella I'd known. Her hair was a mess, her eyes red, her clothes soaked through like she'd been walking for hours. She said she had nowhere else to go, that Miguel had turned on her. I told her I didn't care and that she needed to leave before I called the police. But then she said something that made me pause. He threatened to report you, too. She claimed Miguel had been blackmailing her since the beginning, that he was the real mastermind behind the green card operation, and she'd been forced to play her part because he had her documents and could get her deported. According to her, she never planned to hurt me, but once she got involved, she couldn't back out. I didn't know what to believe anymore. I told her to sit down, and she started explaining everything, trembling between sobs. She met Miguel through a student agency that promised legal help with extensions and job placements. When she couldn't pay his fees, he offered her another way: find an American willing to marry her, and he'd handle the rest. She said she didn't want to do it at first, but her visa was expiring and she panicked. That's when she met me. What broke me was hearing her say, "At first, you were just a name on a list, but then you made me forget why I came here." I wanted to hate her, and I did, but there was something in her eyes that looked genuine. Still, I wasn't going to fall into another trap. I asked her what she wanted from me, and she said Miguel was threatening to use my name in fake paperwork to make it look like I was part of his operation if she didn't cooperate. That was when I realized I might actually be in danger too. I called Jake again, and he told me to document everything she said. He also said if her story was true, Miguel could be charged with trafficking and fraud, but we needed proof. Over the next few days, Isabella stayed in the guest room while I tried to keep my distance. She barely ate, barely spoke, but one night I overheard her crying on the phone, begging someone to stop. I recorded part of that call, where Miguel's voice could be faintly heard threatening her about the documents. The next morning, we took it straight to Jake. He listened, made a few calls, and told us that this was enough to involve federal authorities. For the first time, Isabella looked relieved, but I wasn't ready to forgive her. I told her I'd help her expose Miguel, but once it was over, she'd have to leave my life for good. She nodded quietly, tears running down her face, whispering that she deserved that. We set up a meeting with an agent posing as an immigration officer to lure Miguel into handing over the fake paperwork. I thought it would go smoothly, but Miguel was smarter than we expected. He somehow found out we'd gone to the authorities, and what happened next would turn everything from a legal case into something far darker and personal than I could ever have imagined.
The plan was simple: set a trap and let the authorities handle Miguel. But nothing about this story had ever gone simple. The federal agent working with Jake arranged for a fake meeting at a downtown hotel where Miguel was supposed to deliver the forged immigration papers and collect the rest of his payment. Isabella and I were both nervous, sitting in the car across the street, watching from a distance while the agent waited inside. She kept fidgeting, saying Miguel wouldn't fall for it, that he was too careful. I told her it was our only shot. When the time came, Miguel arrived, confident as ever, wearing a sharp gray suit, carrying a black folder. He walked into the hotel lobby, and for a few minutes, everything went according to plan. But then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number popped up. "You think I didn't see you coming? You're both finished." Before I could even react, the agent inside called for backup, saying Miguel had sensed something was off and bolted. Within seconds, the whole operation went sideways. We jumped out of the car as sirens wailed nearby, and all I could think was that he was coming after us now. By the time officers surrounded the area, Miguel had vanished, leaving behind only the folder, empty except for a note that said, "She's lying to you again." I looked at Isabella, and her expression told me she understood what that meant. The next few days were chaos. Miguel's name popped up nowhere. No social media, no phone activity, nothing. The authorities said he likely fled the state. Isabella was terrified, convinced he'd find her. I wanted to believe she was scared for the right reasons, but a part of me still doubted her. Late one night, while she was asleep, I checked her phone again and found a message she'd drafted but never sent. "It's done. He still doesn't know the rest." My heart froze. The rest? What else was she hiding? When I confronted her the next morning, she burst into tears and confessed that Miguel wasn't just her handler, he was her ex-boyfriend. They'd been running the scam together for years, targeting lonely men online, pretending to fall in love and marrying for green cards. She said she tried to back out after falling for me, but Miguel threatened to expose her to the authorities unless she finished the plan. I felt the room spin around me. Every word she said made me sicker. She wasn't just a victim, she was part of it from the start. She begged me to believe that she truly loved me, that she wanted to make things right, that if I helped the authorities catch Miguel, we could both walk away clean. I wanted to scream, to throw her out, but instead I told her something I didn't expect to come out of my mouth. I told her we were going to finish this, but on my terms. I was done being played. If she really wanted redemption, she would help bring Miguel down completely. No running, no tears, no lies. And as she nodded in silence, I realized the final act of this nightmare was about to begin. And this time, I wasn't just the victim. I was going to be the one writing the ending. The day everything ended started quietly. No calls, no messages, just a strange calm before the storm. Jake and the federal agents had traced Miguel's digital trail to a warehouse near the border, a place he'd used before for fake documentation. Isabella and I were asked to come in and help identify any leads. She looked nervous, but determined, as if she finally wanted to put this to rest. When we arrived, the agents set up surveillance, waiting for Miguel to show up to retrieve his remaining files. Hours passed, and I started to think he wouldn't come, until suddenly his car pulled up. Same gray suit, same arrogance, walking like he owned the world. The agents moved in quickly, but Miguel spotted us and ran toward the back exit. Against my better judgment, I chased him. The sound of footsteps echoed through the empty hallways as he turned around a corner and shouted, "You should have stayed out of this!" He swung at me and we struggled, crashing into metal shelves. My anger took over. All the lies, the betrayal, the humiliation, everything exploded in that moment. Before he could reach for the gun tucked in his waistband, the agents burst in and pinned him down. It was over. Miguel was arrested, charged with fraud, extortion, and conspiracy. The relief I felt was mixed with exhaustion, like my entire body was finally realizing what it had been carrying for months. After giving my statement, I walked outside to breathe, only to find Isabella sitting on the curb, crying quietly. When she saw me, she stood up and whispered, "I'm sorry." She said she had confessed everything to the agents,
that she wanted to help them take down every part of Miguel's network, that she'd accept whatever punishment came. I didn't say anything at first. Part of me wanted to believe her, but another part knew that trust, once broken that deeply, never really heals. I told her I hoped she meant it, because redemption isn't words. It's what you do when no one's watching. A few months later, I got a call from Jake. Isabella had taken a plea deal, helping the authorities dismantle the rest of Miguel's operation. She was deported soon after, leaving behind a letter addressed to me. In it, she wrote that she never meant for me to get hurt, that she fell in love with me for real, but didn't deserve forgiveness. She ended it with one line that stayed with me. "You taught me what love felt like, even if I never earned it." I never wrote back. Life slowly went back to normal, or at least as close to normal as it could. I moved to a new apartment, started therapy, learned how to trust myself again. Sometimes when I pass that same cafe where I first saw her arguing about her drink, I remember how everything began, with a laugh, a spark, a stranger who seemed perfect. But now I know better. Love isn't about grand gestures or promises whispered under a California sunset. It's about truth, even when it hurts. And if there's one thing I learned from all this, it's that sometimes the person you think you're saving is the one sent to destroy you. But that doesn't mean you stop believing in love. It just means next time, you learn to listen to the quiet warnings your heart tried to give you all along.